406.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie, and I am joined once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's been a long time since we have done this, and I have been itching considerably, so I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, it has been, it's so the last, I'm looking at the site, this will be episode 80. Episode 79, I posted to the site on April 30th. And we recorded it on April 13th. So
that's the biggest gap.
Time.
That's our biggest gap, I think, for sure. And I'll take at least 2 to 3 weeks of the blame for that. I had some surgery a couple weeks ago on my sinuses, and I was out. I was not feeling good. I was in no shape to be talking, about anything at that point. So I had to take a little break. I'm feeling better now, which is good. But I was definitely out of it for a while.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. You did celebrate a big birthday while we were off, so another trip around the sun. So happy birthday, happy belated.
Thank you. I hit the magic number 47, which is that's old, man. It's old man for sure. I don't even know what to say. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, when we were catching up, I'm officially in my upper 40s now. I can't say mid 40s. It just doesn't sound accurate. I'm not quite to my late 40s, but shit, man, 50 is racing around the corner. I'm starting my final lap in my 40s. It feels like so.
Yeah. The checkered flag of the 40s is coming out, huh?
Yeah, it is.
I hear you. So I'll be 47 in less than 2 months here. So I'm breathing down that same barrel as well, and feeling it every fucking day, my friend, every day.
You know what really drives me nuts more than anything is when people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm 47, but I don't feel 47." I'm like, I don't either. I feel like 53. Like some days, man, it just I definitely feel the age. I definitely feel like I've gotten older. Certain things that used to work don't work, or they work much more slowly, or they work in my head, but they don't necessarily, work the way they used to. And that's frustrating. That's tough.
It was either last week or the week before. I had like an entire 3 or 4 days where I just had like zero motivation at work, like none, like not even, I'm not really, I'm not engaged in this, but it was just, I'm looking at my computer. I'm like, oh my God, it's 9:13 on Tuesday.
What am I going to do?
So yeah, I hear you. And, I think part of that is school's out for the summer for the boys. And so they've kind of shifted into summer mode, and I'm still doing the same thing that I always do. Right. I'm just doing it in the summer versus, during the school year. So, but, the concept of a midlife crisis is very real. At least it is for me. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about just kind of getting older and what that means, and mortality and those kind of, it's just kind of it's not a bummer necessarily. It's just it thoughts that I'm having now in my late 40s, mid 40s that I never had in my 30s or, even early 40s. So
how is that going to manifest for you? Is that going to be a sports car? Is that going to be some sort of extravagant purchase? Like, what do you think midlife crisis looks like for you?
You know what? I don't know. A couple of years ago, I had my eye on, and I think it's technically a motorcycle. It's called a Slingshot. Have you ever seen these things? It's basically it's like two wheels in the front and one in the back.
Okay.
I just think that would be so much fun to tool around in. The problem is to get a really nice one, you're still talking about, 20 grand, 25 grand. And I just don't know that I'm going to be in a position, even by the time I'm 50 or 55, to have $20,000 or whatever of disposable income,
right?
To just kind of play with. I've got 3 boys, that they're as they get older, their habits get more expensive and they get more expensive. And so my middle guy, he just got done with his freshman year in high school.
Wow.
He plays travel baseball, right? And so it's like, we were in Sandusky last weekend. We are going to Pittsburgh this weekend. We were supposed to go to Florida next weekend. We're going to Nashville. We're going to, again, back to Sandusky. I mean, it's like all of these tournaments, and that's, after you've already paid to play on the team. And then you have to travel to the tournaments, and you have to, and again, it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm not. It's what we signed up for.
Right.
But like, that's where all my disposable fun income goes. It goes to travel baseball and travel basketball and that kind of thing. So
yeah. Oh, it's not cheap for sure.
No. So I don't know. Do you have a midlife crisis toy on your bucket list? I know you've already got your Eddie Van Halen guitar, so that's crossed off, right?
I have a Eddie Van Halen guitar. I wouldn't mind another one. I would like a more traditional style Strat where it's the red guitar with the black and white stripes, circa 1979. I would love to have something along those lines. If I do get a midlife crisis, it'll be in the form of a guitar, probably.
Yeah.
There's a couple that I would like to own before my time is over. My wife will counter with, well, you don't play enough to warrant spending, $3,000 on a guitar, which is a perfectly valid and also stupid argument. But she does have a pretty good point. So I don't know. It may come. I mean, I could certainly wedge one in during my 50th, which we've already discussed is way too goddamn close. So, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen that way. I don't give a shit about cars. I could care less. I would like to have another Jeep someday. That was a very fond time in my life to have that Jeep. So maybe, but honestly, if that never happens, it wouldn't break my heart. So it's never going to be something as expensive as a car, but it definitely would be some piece of either technology or musical instrument.
You just said something there that triggered a thought in my mind. Maybe a potential future podcast topic. So you said something about it would warrant something or other, and that made me think. I had this thought a couple weeks ago, and I forgot we have a spreadsheet that we keep potential podcast topics on. Have we ever talked about the greatest band from a hair ballad perspective? I know we've talked about the greatest hair ballads. Have we ever and the reason I'm saying this is, in my mind, I think it would be Warrant. I think I could easily make that case that Warrant is the greatest ballad band, at least off the top of my head, real quick.
It's an interesting conversation, and we'd have to draw some specific boundaries of what bands are roped in there, because you could argue someone like a Def Leppard or a Journey or some of the ones that weren't necessarily the 80s hair metal out of the Sunset Strip, like Warrant and Poison and Rat and Winger and all of those. Like power ballads can be, Sister Christian by Night Ranger. It can be, Don't Close Your Eyes by Kix. It could be all kinds of stuff. So no, I don't think we've ever said which band has the best ballads. I think you and I strongly agree from the hair metal era, Warrant is definitely my favorite. Top,
right? Yeah.
I think they are. I think I won't say it's got Bob Dylan level songwriting by any means, but I think the songwriting is a little bit more thoughtful than some of their peers for sure. So yeah, it would be a great conversation. I would love to really have to dive in and see if there may be some that I'm not even thinking of.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll put that on the spreadsheet, but I don't remember. I think I was doing some yard work one afternoon, and I was listening to, as I'm prone to do, some hair metal. Oh yeah, and 2 or 3 like Warrant, and then kind of ballads came on, and I was like, man, that'd be a really good. I know we've done the songs. I don't know that we've ever tackled the bands though. I think that would be fun. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you what's summer look like for you now that the girls are out of school, and what do you got on tap? Anything good?
Yeah, girls are out of school. Softball's going on. Not a lot of vacations or anything specific planned, but I guess if I'm thinking forward in the summer and the things that I'm looking forward to, of course, there are concerts that are coming up. My concert season has officially kicked off. I saw the band Death Cab for Cutie last week, the night before my birthday, and that was super fun. I'm a big fan of that band. And we've got some more shows coming up. The County Crows are going to be next weekend, which I'm huge fan of and definitely looking forward to. But on top of some of the concerts, I think this summer is a really interesting summer for movies. And that's what I thought would be a fun chat session that we could have tonight, because it's, it's kind of like the breathing new air in some of the action movies that I feel like we've talked about previously. I mean, this summer, alone, there are quite a few of those movies coming out. We got Fast X, which has already come out. There's a new Transformers movie coming out. We've, of course, got our comic book movies, both Marvel and DC. A new Mission Impossible movie is on its way out to the theaters. We had John Wick not too long ago. That's not really as much of a summer movie, but it's almost like, these action movies are kind of kicking back into full gear. And, it sort of sparks that conversation that I know we've had on this podcast many times about this contentious relationship that I have with these sequels that are somewhat perfunctory, if you will. The ones that happen many years after, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Ghostbusters, these sequels that kind of feel a little bit too mechanical and not a lot of heart and depth. And we've got more of those on the books this year. I mean, like I said, Fast X, Transformers, Mission Impossible, John Wick, all of those. John Wick maybe doesn't count because that I would say is a modern action series. But even Mission Impossible started many years ago, and of course, so did Transformers. And I will say, though, I'm particularly excited about Mission Impossible because I have started to rewatch that entire series of movies, and I really, really love them. With the exception of the second one, I think that's notoriously kind of the black sheep of the family.
It's kind of panned, right? Yeah.
But it's when you think about it, though, it's not a bad action movie. It's not a good Mission Impossible movie. It's not a good spy thriller, but it's a fun action movie. It's just got way too many goofy martial arts wire fu type stuff that doesn't make any sense. And if you take a step back and remember that Tom Cruise's character as Ethan Hunt is supposed to be a spy, none of that shit makes any sense whatsoever. Even though Thandie Newton was arguably the hottest girl that has been in any of the Mission Impossible movies. Oh my God, she was gorgeous. But I rewatched Mission Impossible 3 last night, and I forgot how much I love that movie. It is so fucking good. And it very clearly sets the tone for what's to come in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, etc. movies in the Mission Impossible universe. It course corrects from what they did in 2, and it really refines what they did in the very first movie. And I thought it was brilliant. I really liked it, and I'm excited to continue to go through the series. Of course, I'm partial to Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's probably my favorite actor of all time. Rest in peace. And he plays such a wonderfully intense bad guy in that movie. And I just loved it. It was actually, I didn't even realize this until I started listening to the now playing review today. That was J.J. Abrams' first movie. That was his first
film. Was it really? Oh,
film that he directed. And wow, what a coming out for him, right? Like directing Tom Cruise in this franchise, which it wasn't as big then as it is now. But, it's definitely got J.J. Abrams' fingerprints all over it. We've discussed the whole mystery box. J.J. Abrams likes to introduce these things that he never really provides answers for, which we sort of, we kind of ripped on him a little bit the way he did that in Star Wars, but you do that in Mission Impossible, and I think it's fine. This whole storyline with this thing called the Rabbit's Foot, which is the MacGuffin of that third movie, you never really find out what that thing even is. And you don't even really care because you're just, at least I was just having fun with the ride. But have you seen that movie? Do you remember the third Mission Impossible?
You know what? I have. So for years and years and years, I don't think I had ever seen a single Mission Impossible movie, which ironically enough, I sent you another potential podcast topic today of movies that you would be shocked that we have never seen. So up until a couple of years, right? So, and the reason you're going to kill me, the reason that came to mind, I've never seen a single Expendables movie, which is a travesty in my.
It really isn't though. Like I've seen maybe 1.5, and I'm like, yeah, it's just
okay. It's a travesty just based on the cast. How about that? But.
Right. I think you owe it to yourself to at least check out the first one. And if you like it enough, check out the subsequent ones, because the cast does get bigger and they do get some pretty high profile former action stars. But it's kind of like going to see the Rolling Stones, like you got a bunch of 70-year-old guys up there trying to sound like they did 30 years ago. And I mean, I'm not ripping on the Rolling Stones, are one of my favorite bands of all time, but like clearly they're past their prime, and it does get a little bit suspect. But
So anyways, like I said, up until a couple of years ago, I would put all of those Mission Impossible films on that same list because I hadn't seen any of them. At this point, I've probably seen. I don't know that I've seen the last one, and I don't know that I've seen any of them more than once.
Hmm.
So I can't speak intelligently about them other than to say I agree with you wholeheartedly that Philip Seymour Hoffman was a badass villain in whatever movie he was in. Like that performance really stood out. I don't really know like the backstory of Ethan Hunt, from the show. Like it was a show in the 50s and 60s, right? Like
Yep,
way back in the day.
with
So I don't know if
Martin Landau, I believe.
right. So I don't know if the Tom Cruise portrayal of Ethan Hunt is a good portrayal, bad portrayal. My perception is it doesn't really matter because Tom Cruise does kind of a really good job with it, and he kind of makes it his own. Again, whether it's true to the quote unquote canon or not, but I've enjoyed those films. Unfortunately, I can't even speak all that intelligently. I've seen them once, and I don't even know if I've seen them all.
It's an interesting experience to kind of go back through these, especially if you watch them through the lens of 2023, because Mission Impossible 3, I believe, came out in 2005. And this is a time when Tom Cruise's reputation was extremely polarizing because this was
Mm-hmm.
immediately following the
Katie Holmes stuff, right?
the Katie Holmes stuff. It was following the Brooke Shields stuff where he came out and basically
Okay.
told her to get over her postpartum depression because it wasn't really a thing, which, certainly impacted his likability with his female demographic. And same with the mental health conversation where he called Matt Lauer glib and, that really weird interview that he did. So his star rating, I think, was waning a little bit at that time. And you can kind of tell when you watch Mission Impossible 3 because they definitely set him up to be a much more likable character. They really kind of tone down the ego and they give him this love interest. Michelle Monaghan is in it. And this is the one where he gets married to her and she's
Okay.
in a couple of the movies. And, you get the sense that they're trying to soften him up a little bit. But you watch it through today and it doesn't have the same impact because you don't really remember what it was like in 2005. So it's interesting and they're really fun. I think all the movies are incredibly well done and they only get better as they go. So I'm looking forward to continuing through there. And I know Tom Cruise is certainly kind of again, polarizing. I hate to keep using that word, but some people really love him and some people won't watch his movies just because of his antics and the Scientology and all the stuff. I'm of the mind that if I watch your movie and I enjoy it, as long as you're not out there being a pedophile or doing something that's clearly morally, objectively wrong, I
Mm-hmm.
don't really care. Like, I don't want to be his best friend. I don't want to get his autograph. I watch his movies. I really enjoy him. That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And he absolutely does a fantastic job in all of these movies, whether it's the obnoxious stunts that he does or just ratcheting up the intensity of this character and these stories that he's in. So yeah, they're far-fetched. Yeah, nobody can have this many moles and and rogue agents and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's not practical on any level, but you and I have talked a lot about turn off your brain popcorn movies. And I think I've just discovered that these are the ones that I like. These are the ones specifically that I like. I know you like Transformers and some of the Michael Bay stuff is your jam. This is the stuff that really connects with me.
Yeah. So you mentioned Transformers. So there's a new Transformers movie that I think is probably in theaters like right now today. And yeah, I'm a kind of a weird. I think I'm a kind of a weird 40 something year old Transformers fan who actually really doesn't. I really enjoy the Bayformers flicks. I know there's a lot of folks at our age that like got in during G1 and really don't like the Bayformers films. I'm a huge exception to that. You mentioned that you were rewatching Mission Impossible. I've actually been going back and rewatching some of the Transformers films, especially
Nice.
with my kids. And I'll be honest with you, they hold up really well. I mean, they are again, they're you already mentioned it. They're stupid, kind of turn your brain off popcorn films, but they hold up really well. I will be honest with you, I'm not familiar really with the Beast Wars source material that this particular movie is kind of being based on. Um, but based on what I've seen in the trailers, it looks like I'm really going to enjoy it because it looks like it is kind of in the same vein as the Bumblebee film versus some of those original Bayformer flicks. And I really like the look and feel of that. And I'm having a hard time like understanding the timeline of this, like in that universe, because I think this is actually a prequel to even the first three Transformers films. I'm not
Really?
sure how that's, yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work. So like I'm looking right now on IGN, and there are 6 feature-length Transformers movies. The first one, so this is in chronological order. The first one is actually Bumblebee, then Rise of the Beast, then Transformers '07, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you remember like the way, which one was it? There was, at the end of one of them, Unicron was showing up, and Unicron is in this. So I'm not sure how they're going to shoehorn that in. I don't know if they're going to have to retcon a bunch of stuff or what, but I'm excited. I'm looking forward to going to see it for sure.
So that comes out tomorrow night. Are you
yes.
Are you going to try to make plans to see it? A late night
You know
showing,
what?
perhaps?
I don't know. I mentioned earlier we got a baseball tournament this weekend. My wife is taking my freshman, or the guy that just got done with his freshman year. He's got a baseball game in Pittsburgh that starts at 9 a.m. on Friday, so they're leaving tomorrow. I'm going to stay here with my oldest and the dog. So I don't know. We might go see the movie tomorrow night. I don't know. We don't have any plans right now, but we'll see. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So do you have, like, I see 7 movies if you count Bumblebee in the series.
Yes.
Am I counting? Yeah, 7 movies, including this new one. And obviously you haven't seen the new one yet, but do you have a favorite? I mean, I'm going to assume you're going to say the first one, but if you had to omit the first one, or if the first one is not your favorite, which one would you say you would be most willing to revisit?
It would be the first one. If not, then it would be Bumblebee. I loved Bumblebee. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you're a G1 fan and you don't like the like Bayformers look and feel, Bumblebee is a really good option because there's a lot of G1 looking, character models and those kind of things. And you've always got Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime the whole time.
Okay, so he's in that one too, right?
He's in every single one. Yeah, he's the voice of Prime every single time. Yep.
I mean, how shitty is it going to be when Peter Cullen dies and we have to have a new voice for Optimus Prime? Unless they find a way to Darth Vader his voice like they did in the Obi-Wan series, right? Like, I just have to think that is got to be jarring for that because he's so recognizable in that role. Yeah. I mean, to fans of the series, if you're not a fan, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't care. But I mean, I've seen maybe 3 of these movies, but so I'm not a fan to the extent that you are, but even I wouldn't engage in anything Transformers related if it didn't have Peter Cullen because he
didn't have Prime. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be rough, right? I guess our only saving grace is that technology is to the point where, I mean, they can make just about anything sound like just about anything, and you made a good point, James Earl Jones didn't do the voice of Vader in Obi-Wan, and it was pretty good. You know what I mean?
So, I wouldn't have known. I honestly would not have known. I thought they got him back and just fixed his voice because the last time he did do vocal work, I think, was Rogue One, right? And you could hear a little bit of the strain in his voice there. And I remember thinking when he was coming back for Obi-Wan, oh man, I don't know if I want to hear this. And then I heard it and I was dumbfounded.
Yeah, it was good.
Like,
it was really good.
Like it's coming out of 1983 right now. It was really good. So we talked about all of these movies that are coming out, but obviously we have not yet touched on arguably the biggest one that is set to drop at the end of June. And that is the new Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, marking the 5th movie in the series in the last 42 years. And I don't know, like I'm really unsure where I am with all of this because we're coming off of the Crystal Skull, which happened 15 years ago. And that one, I can't use the word polarizing because polarizing typically implies that there are people on both sides of the equation who both loved it and hated it. I don't know anybody who loved the Crystal Skull. It was a significant disappointment to most people. Granted, it followed, arguably one of the greatest movies in the series, The Last Crusade, although many years later. So we've got the Dial of Destiny that's coming out in, I guess, a couple weeks at this point. And I don't know, like what we've known for, I don't know, probably at least 4 or 5 years that they were trying to make a fifth Indiana Jones movie. And I'm curious to know how you felt about that, even when you first remember hearing or processing the fact that they were going to do another one. Is that something that excites you at this point, or is that really more cringeworthy?
And I don't remember which movie you were talking about just earlier in the podcast here, but you made mention of another sequel that, let me take a step back. To answer your question, I don't know that it's cringeworthy, but no, I'm back then 4 years ago, I wasn't excited. And I'm not excited. I'm not excited. I'm not.
Yeah.
And it bums me out to say that. Now that doesn't mean I won't go see it, because I will. But Crystal Skull, oh, I know what I was gonna say. You made mention about a movie that wasn't a great movie in the a series, or an entry in the series, but it was a decent movie. I can't remember which movie we're referring to.
Probably Mission Impossible too, but
Okay,
I would
maybe.
say the same maybe about Ghostbusters Afterlife. If you just
Okay, yeah,
took the disappointing treatment of the old characters out of there, the new movie had some
it was an
really,
entertaining movie.
yeah, it was an
Yeah,
entertaining movie. It sort of shit the bed with the rest, but I won't
right.
rehash that.
And that's kind of the argument that I would make for Crystal Skull. If that was just a random, like, non-Indiana Jones movie, again, wouldn't be like a great movie, but it would be kind of just an entertaining Sunday afternoon, like turn your brain off, just kind of like a comic booky, like one-off type movie. Again,
Yeah.
it would still have issues, but when you layer the fact that that is an absolutely iconic character, like top 5 all-time character, and you throw him in that movie, it becomes an ultimate disappointment.
Yeah.
That particular movie. So coming off that, I couldn't be less enthused about the fact that we've got an even older Harrison Ford playing an even older, and that's not an ageist comment. It's just like the Indiana Jones that I know and love, is that swashbuckling badass running through the jungle, running away from getting on a train and doing this, getting on a horse. Like that's the action star that I want. And I've heard like good things, believe it or not, about the action sequences in this movie, but it's still a 70-some-year-old Harrison Ford doing action. I don't know. I'm not enthused. I'm not excited.
Well, before we get too far into that, I'd say let's put a pin in even the Crystal Skull and the Dial of Destiny, and let's kind of take a step back and talk about this franchise and how it started for us, the Indiana Jones franchise, which of course the first movie was called Raiders of the Lost Ark, and much like its second cousin Star Wars, got renamed along the way and is now called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So these are all Indiana Jones movies, but the first movie came out in 1981, and I'm curious if you remember sort of your first exposure to this, and I'd really love to know, and it's going to be hard to sum up because I don't even know how I would, but like, what did Indiana Jones mean to you as a kid growing up and watching these movies? Where does this series rank with the likes of the Star Wars and the Ghostbusters and all of those movie franchises that we loved so much as kids and made such an impression on us?
Wow. And that answer right there is probably a whole nother podcast in and of itself. But my first recollection of Indiana Jones, I did not see it in the theaters, or at least I didn't see it when it first came out. Obviously, I was just too young. It would have been on VHS. I don't remember where it was rented from, or it might have even been on TV. I was always, my all-time favorite Star Wars character growing up was always Han Solo, and it was because he had a lot of Indiana Jones in him, right? Obviously, it's the same character, or it's the same actor, but Han Solo was that kind of swashbuckling guy in a galaxy far, far away, and the Indiana Jones franchise was, I mean, back then it would have been either a close second or a 1A to Star Wars back then. So again, that would have been, when there was only a couple Star Wars movies, maybe 3 at the time, and maybe 2 or 3 Indiana Jones films. And you mentioned something earlier, and we'll come back to it, but Raiders or Last Crusade is my favorite Indiana Jones film.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. Do you remember which ones you saw in theaters? Have you ever seen? You said you were too young when Raiders came out initially. Have you seen it ever in the theater, like in a re-release or anything?
I did. I couldn't tell you when it was, but I did see it once in the theaters. I did not see the original airing of the second one in the theaters. In fact, was that like the very first PG-13 movie, or one of the very first?
It was actually the movie that inspired the very first PG-13.
Okay, I knew there was some connection.
Rating.
Okay.
So Red Dawn was, I think we talked about that on a previous episode, but Red Dawn was actually the first PG-13 movie. But this movie, which came out in the same year, I believe, was the one that pushed the rating system into saying, hey, we need something between PG and R because this is pretty intense. And I remember that because I did see Temple of Doom in the theaters. And this is the only time where I almost had to get up and leave because I was so creeped out by the scene where they are all eating and they cut open the snake and all the little snakes come out. And I was just like, I was so creeped out. And then my dad, who took me to see that, is like, do you want to leave? And I'm like, well, we'll try to stick this out a little bit. And I think I ended up finishing the movie, but that was my first experience. And that was tough. Like, it was a hard thing to watch, even though the movie, I think redeems itself by the end. I think it definitely gets better.
Yeah, I remember very vividly. I was having dinner at a friend's house, and his older sister had seen that movie in the theaters the night before, or the week before, what have you, and she was kind of relaying all of this stuff, because again, this is before the internet, so the only way you found out what was in a movie was by talking to somebody that had seen it. And she was just telling us these stories about the snake scene and the spiders and the heartbeat scene, and we were just blown away.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember when I saw that movie the first time, I had a very visceral reaction, similar to what you did. I was seeing it at home, so it was probably 6 months or a year later. I do remember very vividly going to see The Last Crusade in the theaters, and absolutely was just blown away. Loved it.
Yeah, I do too. Temple of Doom was interesting because it was probably my least favorite of the original 3 for a long time. But for me, I almost put it up there with Raiders, I think, just because there are certain parts of that movie that I think work so well. And even though I think when I was younger, I was disappointed because, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he goes after the Ark of the Covenant. In The Last Crusade, he goes after the Cup of Christ and the Holy Grail. And, in Temple of Doom, he goes after a couple rocks. And that was kind of, it's sort of, I compare it to remember Romancing the Stone, when they go after that giant emerald, and then the Jewel of the Nile, and the jewel is like a dude. And it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, that was the most disappointing ending, right. or reveal at the end of the third act. It's like, oh, that's fucking terrible. Like, that's kind of how I thought about the Temple of Doom. But I feel revisiting that it's the character work between Indy and Short Round and Kate Capshaw's character, Willie, thank you, I almost said Winnie. That it just works so well, and it doesn't matter that they're ultimately not going for fortune and glory, which is funny because that's what they kind of talk about the whole movie, but that's not ultimately what he ends up getting as a result of that.
It's funny that's the first movie that I can remember, and I don't even think I realized it at the time, that actually was a prequel. That's the first one that I can remember being a prequel to, being a sequel, but actually being a prequel. I don't remember that being a thing before that. I'm sure there's some movie out there that is. I can't think of one.
Yeah, and to this day, I don't know why Spielberg and Lucas decided to do that. It doesn't make any sense, because as a prequel, I think it only takes place a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark does. So I don't understand why they would have done that. I'm sure there's probably a reason somewhere floating around the internet, but like it doesn't. Lucas and Spielberg had the idea of serialized movies in mind when they created the character of Indiana Jones, or Indiana Smith, as I believe he was called before. And, legend has it that Spielberg originally wanted to make a James Bond film, and Lucas is like, yeah, but I got this great idea about doing an archaeologist who does all these things. And it's, every movie could be a different story and all of that. And that's where Indiana Jones was born and the Raiders of the Lost Ark came from. And so, like, I get that every story is sort of very unique. It's not really a continuity based character or series, but why they hopped backwards a year for the Temple of Doom and then decided to go back for, well, I guess in 1989 you have to go forward because Harrison Ford is 9 years older than he was in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you can't really convincingly shoot that movie with Harrison Ford that much older, at least not in the 80s, right? There's no special effects or CG that's going to de-age him or anything like that. But
right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that it was interesting that they did that, but I would say it was many, many years after I saw that movie before I even realized it was a prequel, because I probably didn't pay attention to the year that was posted on the screen before that. Like, it doesn't matter.
And again, that's literally the only way you would know, right? Like, there's no, there is no, it's literally just a date at the beginning, and they could just as easily have done it, said it 2 years after Raiders, and nobody would know the difference.
Yeah. And that's why it doesn't make, and it doesn't tell any story. It doesn't explain anything about why Raiders of the Lost Ark was that it went the way that it was. Right. So why said it before? I don't know. Maybe that was just to have fun and play with the story and move it around. I don't know. So thinking back through all these movies, and this is a fun question I was looking forward to asking. Who is the hottest Indiana Jones girl in all these movies?
Oh, wow.
It's an easy answer. You just have to think of it.
I mean, it's got to be Elsa, right? It's got to be
so.
Elsa.
Yeah,
it's got to be Elsa. Yeah.
Of the love interests, I think. I mean, I think Kate Capshaw is beautiful, and she was very 80s. She was very much, or I guess that's not fair to say 80s because the movie took place in 1935. But like, there was something about her that I don't really think brought out how beautiful she really is. But like, Elsa was, she was gorgeous. That girl was so hot.
And I mean, that's Jenny Flex. She was a Bond girl too. That's Jenny Flex from View to Kill.
That's right. And she was in Major League 2 as well.
That's right. She was.
She has not been in a whole lot, but she has been in a couple things. And I don't know where they found her. I don't know where she came from. Like, and she hasn't been in much since. So she was kind of almost like a, one and done in terms of like huge movies like that. But
yeah, I'll take it though. Yeah, she was real good.
Yeah, she wasn't too bad. But I would say out of all those movies, the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade was my favorite as well. And I think it's funny because there are so many things wrong with that movie in terms of like just obnoxious historical inaccuracies and all that stuff. But I just don't think there's a funner movie that exists than that film, because it just does such a good job of pacing the beginning stuff with River Phoenix, which is really well done. And then it flashes back to the future, and it takes place in 1938, I think. So this would have been like 3 or 2 years after Raiders of the Lost Ark. And, then they end up in Venice and they're traveling all around the world. And it just, I don't know. There's something about that movie that is great. Sean Connery as Indy's father does such a good job. And I don't know, it's just fun. I can't really put my finger on it, but it is easily the most rewatchable of all those movies.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is. I agree. It's, well, first of all, it's the greatest quest, right? You're going after the cup of Christ. I mean, you're going after literally the Holy Grail. And for me, it's the interplay between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. I mean, you nailed it. Sean Connery in that movie. I mean, he was already at that point. He was Bond, but I'll be honest with you, like, seeing him play Henry Jones Sr. might be my favorite performance from Sean Connery, which is like a blasphemy to say that as the Bond character.
Yeah.
But man, I just love him in this as this character for sure.
He has an accent though, right? Like, hey,
oh, for sure.
So
yeah.
there's some issues that are a little bit hard to get over, but I mean, he's still, I think, really well cast, and it certainly continues a bit of a trope for a lot of Spielberg movies, which is, missing fathers or fathers that aren't around, things like that. Like, you go back through many Steven Spielberg movies, that's a very common thread that he has. But this one works. It just works so well, and it's so much fun. And I sort of figured by the end of this movie, yeah, the Cup of Christ, like, how do you top that? Like, I've said that so many times about this movie. Like, what do you do that's bigger and better than that if you ever make a sequel to this movie? And unfortunately they tried, and they did. And I don't know that it worked quite as well as I hoped it would, but I also wonder if maybe it's not as bad as I think it was if I go back to revisit it, because I don't know. I mean,
Crystal Skull?
Right. I haven't really watched it in many years. I did actually, right before we started this podcast, I did watch the opening scene, the one where he's in, is it Roswell? He's at Area 51.
The refrigerator scene?
Okay, so everything up until the refrigerator scene
is pretty good. Yeah,
is fun. I mean, it is a little bit jarring to see Harrison Ford at that age, which was 15 years ago. I guess that would put him in his mid to late 60s. It is a little jarring to see him doing that there, but I'm going with it. Like, it's fun and it's interesting, and it's not as it's not as cringy as some of the stuff I'm seeing in this new trailer. But yes, the fridge scene is the thing that absolutely I just remember being in the theater and thinking, oh no, like, I can't do this. Like, and maybe that's not fair, because all of these movies have that moment where it's like, okay, no human being could practically do something like this. I mean, we've talked about it. He jumps out of a plane with a raft and lands on a mountain in the Temple of Doom, right? Like, but as a kid, I totally bought it. Like, I'm like,
of course.
you could do that. It's a raft. Like, it'll just bounce, right? No big deal. But like, the fridge scene, I mean, I know how old and awkward Harrison Ford is, even at 2008. The fact that he gets shot about 500 yards in a refrigerator by an atomic bomb and just walks out of it is, oh God, it was just so hard to stomach for me.
Yeah. The fridge is bad, but what's worse for me in that the worst thing by far in that movie is the fucking like gophers or chipmunks. They have. It's just it's Caddyshack. Yeah, it's Caddyshack-esque.
Yeah.
It is like I probably could give it a pass if it was just the refrigerator, but then we've got these fucking gophers that are just like popping up and like breaking the third wall, and that's what really lost me, was the gophers.
So, but where do you think, I'm curious, where in your opinion do you think this movie failed? Was it old Indiana Jones? Was it the whole Shia LaBeouf, Mutt Lang, not the producer for Def Leppard, Mutt, whatever his name was,
Jones?
Well, yeah. You think it was a Spielberg fail? Was it the fucking fridge? Was it Indiana Jones and the alien invasion? I mean, there are a lot of things that I feel like you could potentially draw to, but like, where does this movie lose you? Not a particular scene necessarily, but like, where do we lose the spirit of the first three movies in this one?
Yeah, you know what? I honestly think it's a combination of things. I don't really have a problem with Shia LaBeouf. Again, I'm a Bayformers fan, so like I really don't have a problem with Shia. I don't have a problem with the fact that Indiana Jones has a kid. Like, that actually makes sense. He and Marion, blah blah blah. I get it. I think it's a combination of the fact that they went a little bit too far with like the campy type stuff, right? Like the gophers and those kind of things, coupled with the fact that like it's just not as interesting as the Holy Grail. Like it's just not, right? Like if you look at each individual scene of that movie, again, and you take out the campiness of the gopher and the like, some of the individual scenes in that movie are really, really entertaining. That first scene is great. The scene where he's fighting the Nazis and the ants, and they take the guy into the like, that is a good, the monkey scene with Shia LaBeouf is pretty bad. That one's pretty comical.
Yeah.
And then the final scene is just kind of straight out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, another Spielberg flick. I don't know. I think it falls down based on the fact that it's anything after the Grail. The fact that Indiana Jones is old or older, I think hurts, which is candidly, and not to be ageist, but really what I'm terrified of in this last movie. Because that's 15 years ago, and he was old then, and you look at it, you're like, oh Christ. I mean, Grandpa Jones is, we're in trouble. And again, I think it's going to suffer from the same. I don't know what the fuck the Dial of Destiny is. I don't know why I should care. I don't. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the cup of Christ. That I've thought about that a lot over the years too. I think the only thing in my mind that even comes close might be like something like Atlantis. You know what I mean? Like,
but even that it talked about that for a while, and I don't know, did that get made into a video game or something? I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I think it was a story idea that was tossed around. But even then, I don't really see Indiana Jones putting on a wetsuit and diving into the ocean or anything like that. Like, I don't know that there's any sort of relic at this point that could top what they've already done.
Yeah.
So
now, what I will say, here's what I will say. And I don't know how to articulate it all that well. Have you ever seen the there's a series of films, actually I think there's only 2 of them.
Oh my gosh, you're gonna talk about Alan Quartermain and the Lost City.
No. They're Nick Cage films. Oh shit. There's 2 of them. They're Nick Cage films, and they're very reminiscent.
Not the National Treasure movies.
Yes.
Well, I think there's 3 of those.
Is there 3? But those films do what I wish some of these Indiana Jones sequels would have done, right? Because so the first one, he has to steal the Declaration of Independence, right? And so they do a really good job of like flashbacks and flash forwards, and they do a really good job of kind of like this historical fiction, kind of like a Dan Brown kind of thing. But those films in my mind, could very easily have been Indiana Jones films. And and again, I don't know what it is that's different, but they are much more enthralling than Crystal Skull was. And again, I don't know what's different about them. Maybe they're a little bit more reality based. I don't know. I'm rambling, but have you ever seen those? Have you seen those films?
It's been a while. If I recall, the first movie, they were after the Declaration of Independence or something like that.
They had to steal the Declaration because there was some other thieves that were going to steal it. Sean Bean was going to steal it. Yeah. And then the next one was kind of a lost city of gold. And it was Ed Harris was going after it. But I don't know.
I would say the same about the Mummy movies. I actually thought the first 2 Mummy movies were really good. They were super entertaining. I mean, they're clearly derivative of Indiana Jones and probably wouldn't exist if Indiana Jones wasn't a thing. But I liked them. I thought they were good. I think that Shia LaBeouf is somebody that a lot of people didn't like at the time.
That's fair.
And I think if they, in hindsight, could have cast a Chris Pratt or somebody a little bit more likable, then not only could they have had a better movie, they could have set it up a little cleaner for a sequel, because I guarantee Shia LaBeouf is not in this movie. I don't think Karen Allen is in this upcoming 5th movie either. So they're basically writing those characters right back out because they realized it didn't really click in the 4th movie.
I'm interested, or I will be interested to see how they get rid of Mutt and Marion. I hope they give us something more than what they did with Nev Campbell's character in Scream, just like literally a dropped line. But I have a feeling that's what it's going to be, if anything.
I don't think they're going to spend any time with it. They're either dead or they've picked up and moved away because he's just such a deadbeat husband or something. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to say, but I think that it's probably good not to involve them again. And maybe that was sort of the downfall for the fourth one, is that they tried real hard to shoehorn Karen Allen back in and do this sort of reunion thing. And she didn't really come across as naturally as I think maybe she did in that first movie. And for me anyways, and it felt like she hadn't acted in about 40 years, because she was just kind of all over the place, and it didn't feel very real. So I think that affected my enjoyment.
Well, and you know, and if you take a step back and you look at like the entire series and you look at the chronology of those films, so in Raiders we are introduced to Marion, who he hadn't seen in presumably years, and she was very young and blah blah blah, this that and the other thing. So then that means in theory he already knew her in Temple of Doom, which again I understand it was only a year before, so it makes sense maybe that he wouldn't talk about her. You know, that's fine. But then I don't think she was mentioned at all in Last Crusade, like not even a passing nothing. I mean, at least in Last Crusade we got a picture of Brody, or no, Brody was still alive in that one, so she wasn't mentioned at all. And then she comes back full force in Crystal Skull. I don't know. It's just like the the way that character is treated is just very kind of disjointed through, even within the series itself. It's very bizarre.
And should we touch on the fact that maybe Indiana Jones did some inappropriate things with an underage girl? Because they kind of lean pretty heavy into that in that first movie.
They do. In fact, she even says it, right? She was
Well, the
like,
whole reason her dad doesn't want anything to do with him is because he messed around with her when she was kind of young. So he
yeah,
kind of statutory raped the situation there. And I feel
yeah.
like that doesn't, maybe they're trying to not, bring that piece up anymore. I mean, there's not a lot of detail around what happened with those characters and all that, but she basically said, I was a kid. And
Yeah.
she was probably in her early 20s when that conversation was happening as a character in that movie. So,
Well, she was a bar owner, right? At that
right.
point, when that conversation was happening. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but you're right. She was in,
But it had to
yeah,
be
she was
early
young.
20s at that
Right.
point,
Yeah.
and she hadn't seen him in a while. So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they wrote that a little bit too dark, but
And it was a different time, right? There were things that they could get away with in the movies, and we had a podcast about that, right? Movies that you couldn't make today.
right. We'll just go ahead and chalk that up to be in the 30s, and I guess that's just what happens back then.
Yeah. So I don't know. How about you? Like, are you? I buried the lead. I'm not super excited about this film. How about you? Are you this new one? Are you excited? Do you care? Do you not? Are you like me? You're gonna go and just kind of meh your way through it, or what?
I very much care, but I'm crushed already by the reviews that have come out so far, and they are terrible. And that breaks my heart so significantly, because I didn't think for a second that this was gonna be the perfect ending to the series and that they were gonna totally redeem themselves from 2008. I just honestly thought maybe this would be a nice way to put a bow on this character and just do some fan service and let him go off into the sunset and do the stuff. And I feel like they're going to try to do that, but there are some pieces here that I think are important to consider that are going to make this really difficult. The first and arguably most important is that Spielberg doesn't have anything to do with this movie. He's not directing it. This is the only movie in all 5 of these Indiana Jones movies that Spielberg's not directing. And as far as I know, George Lucas doesn't have anything to do with it either. So, I mean, Spielberg's not even producing it. So, look, Spielberg you can make all the arguments that you want that he hasn't really done anything super impactful for the last 20, 30 years. I don't know. I mean, Jurassic Park may have been the last really, really great movie he did. Maybe Schindler's List, I don't know. But, he still has this sort of, what do you call it? he has this style of directing that if you're watching a Spielberg movie, you just know it because of the way that it looks and the way that it feels. And I'm concerned that we're going to lose some of that, and this is going to become more of a schlocky action flick with somebody else at the helm. Now, I don't know James Mangold very well. I think he's done some other good movies. I doubt anybody like Kathleen Kennedy would just hand him the reins without, really trusting him.
Yeah. No,
But
he's got some actually really, really good movies that he directed. He directed Copland, he directed Girl Interrupted, he had directed 310 to Yuma, The Wolverine, Logan, Ford versus Ferrari. So
okay.
he's got
Wolverine
some
is where I know.
good flicks. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's fair.
But I will say, yeah, because I've seen a lot of those same really, really terrible reviews too. And I mean, immediately my thoughts are going to like, how is this movie going to compare to other, like, I mean, I suppose it's a sequel, right? It's not a requel, right? So it's not the Halloweens and the Screams that we've been dealing with.
Right.
It, it so I guess the closest comparison that we're going to get is something like Rise of Skywalker, right?
Maybe.
Or the Ghostbusters movie, like these sequels that are so long in the future. And again, Ghostbusters, I think we did even did a deep dive, or we did a review about it. I think we enjoyed that film, but maybe not as a Ghostbusters film, and we've really kind of universally panned it in terms of the way they treated the legacy characters, the Ghostbusters. We've done 3 deep dive podcasts on the Star Wars sequels, and I think that first one, I think we kind of both really loved, and then kind of went downhill from there. But my big concern with this one, man, is the age of Harrison Ford, and the fact that it's an action series, and is he going to be able to do that action? And I don't think he is.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he doesn't have a big prize to go after that we really care about, right? I don't know what the fuck the Dial of Destiny is. And couple that with the fact that there's not really any like characters that you really care about. You know what I mean? Like there's not an interaction between like a Han and Luke or what have you that like in Star Wars that you care about. Even if Marion was in this movie, I don't care about that interaction. It's just like a different dynamic. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, it makes total sense. So you said something that kind of triggered a thought that I think is going to be a big factor in what people think of this movie, because you talked about Ghostbusters, you talked about Star Wars. The differences between those and this is that the legacy characters are taking a back seat to the new characters. In this case, the legacy character is the main character, and he's got to hold this movie, and he's got to hold it as a 77-year-old action star. And that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. And I've seen some of the special effects in some of these action scenes. If you go to Disney Plus right now, Disney Plus just acquired all the Indiana Jones movies. You can watch them there. They have a 5-minute sneak preview of the Dial of Destiny. And there is a scene at the end of this 5-minute preview that they show you. And I kind of winced a little bit because it's got him. It's like this scene where it's like a high speed chasing cars down a alleyway somewhere. And Harrison Ford's hopping from car to car. And I'm like, that's not happening. And it doesn't look very genuine. And that's what I'm really concerned about, is that it's, in Crystal Skull, I thought he looked as good as he could have looked. Like in this new movie, I think they're going to try too hard to make him look the same, and it's going to there's just not enough disbelief I could suspend to buy into this. And to your point about the characters and who to get involved in, we know that Sala is coming back. My guess is it's for a 2-minute cameo. And I've already talked about my desire to get Short Round back for this. And I think they probably missed the boat by about 5 minutes on him, because now he's an Oscar award-winning actor. And, they had no idea that he was gonna be, that Ke Huy Quan was gonna be in that position. But they still should have brought him back. I still think that they should have. And my guess is that he's not there. But yeah, I mean, it's basically he's the only one left. Sean Connery, obviously is dead, and his character died before the fourth movie even came out. So who's left, and why do we care, and what's going on? And it's just, I feel like it's gonna be sad, and it's not gonna.
Yeah,
It's
I
not gonna
mean,
be
yeah,
good.
I agree. You know, I think if Short Round was going to be in it, we would have heard it, right? Like you don't kind of keep that kind of secret. Um, doesn't sound like Shia LaBeouf's in it at all, which again doesn't need to be. That's fine. Whatever scene Salah's. I mean, Salah wasn't really in those other movies. You know, he's a couple scenes here and there, so it's like it'll be cool to see him, but it'll be cool to see him the way it was cool to see the Millennium Falcon in. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, there's a
Yeah.
character that we recognize, right? It's
Well,
not going
not
to
even the
be
Millennium Falcon. It's gonna be like maybe Lando level in Rise of
okay. Yeah,
Skywalker,
yeah, yeah. Right,
right? Like
exactly.
he's gonna pop in, he's gonna say a couple of things, and
Right,
we're
and be
all
done.
gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, remember when he was cool?" And then just, but have absolutely
Right.
no purpose other than to be like, "Hey, do you remember this guy? We're gonna put him out on screen again," you know? But
Yeah.
otherwise, like, I don't see any other characters or actors. I mean, it depends on if they try to keep this serialized like they have the other movies, and I can't tell if they're gonna do that or not, you know?
I wonder, are they going to try and set up a future film universe where Indiana Jones is another character, a la James Bond? Like, are they going to try to continue this universe without Harrison Ford? I really wonder, are they going to try to do that?
I
I
know.
don't know.
I doubt it very seriously. I think that the most that could happen is that they may reboot it someday. You know, they may just start all over again, maybe even tell the story of the Ark of the Covenant again, but then maybe go on to tell some different stories and plan it out with a different actor, you know,
Yeah.
5, 10 years down the road. Like Batman, you know, kind of reboot the story and do all that over again. I don't I think this is honestly the last Indiana Jones movie that we'll ever see, at least of this cast of these
Yeah.
characters. I don't think they're going to continue anything because I feel like the later in time you get, the harder it gets to. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, for sure.
this new movie takes place in like 1969, I think. I mean, in the
Yeah.
trailer, there's a Rolling Stones song playing, and that's very jarring for
Yeah.
me. You know, like I don't want to
Yeah.
see Indiana Jones in a modern world. I want to see him, you know, back when there was, you know, no TV and or at
Right.
least small black and white TVs, and you know, it's a very sort of plain and simple world, and I think that's gonna also have some kind of effect on how I feel about this movie.
Yeah. No, I agree. Just as a random aside, I was just looking here. Harrison Ford, as of right now, is 80 years old.
Yeah.
He was born on July 13th. He shares a birthday with my brother and my father. He is older than President Joe Biden,
Wow.
which, which, yeah. So
To
not
be
to talk,
fair,
yeah.
I never had the opportunity to vote for Harrison Ford, and if I did, I
Oh,
sure as shit
100%.
would have taken him. 100%. Yes.
100%. Yeah. So another like interesting and I think probably bad thing, right? So I'm just looking at, I love looking at kind of budgets and box offices of films throughout the years, right? I know like when we do deep dives, I always look at that. So the budget for Raiders of the Lost Ark was 20 million. Box office was 389.9 million. Budget for Temple of Doom was 28.17. Box office of 333.1. Budget for Temple of Doom, I'm sorry, Last Crusade was 48 million. Box office of 474 million. Budget of Crystal Skull was 185 million.
Wow.
Box office of $790 million for a piece of garbage movie.
That's
Okay.
huge. Yeah.
It is. Now, again, budget of 185. What do you think the budget for Dial of Destiny was?
Oh,
Got a guess?
geez. 250.
$300 million.
Oh my God. That's a
I could
lot of CGI
I
jumping him around.
I can foresee a scenario where this movie does not make its budget back.
Nah, I don't think it's going to get to that. I think there's
I
still
hope
enough
not. I hope I'm
Gen
wrong.
Xers. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I think there's still enough Gen Xers that'll go out and see this. And you and I have been talking very ominously about this movie the whole time, but we'll both go see it for sure.
Yeah. 100%.
And
yeah.
I doubt I'll see it multiple times, but I will absolutely see it once. I mean, it'll make at least 500. I have to think. It may not make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's going to depend on what people think of this movie. Like, I kind of hope people go see this movie on opening weekend. They're like, oh no, actually it's great. Like the reviews are shit. Like if I feel like if it's really polarizing, then that at least gives me hope that there may be something out of it that I might take, that I might enjoy. But as of this point right now, the review that scared me the most was from IGN when they said we had no idea how good we had it with the Crystal Skull.
I saw that too.
And I felt my soul just like slip out of my body. It made me so sad. And yeah, I don't know. So what I do think is interesting, and I wanted to ask you this, this is the last question that I had that I wanted to ask, but if you have any, then by all means. But so, this is a beloved franchise, despite, the lackluster response to Crystal Skull. The first three movies are fantastic. Dial of Destiny, we don't have high hopes for, but we don't know what it's going to be like yet. So this movie series is likely going to end as a 5-movie series.
Yes.
Off the top of your head, can you name any other franchises that have ended at 5? I have the answer. I have 6 of them. One of them, maybe 2 of them, I think you will potentially get. And mind you, some of these will not end with 6. Some of these will have more, but as of today, they do not have any more than 5.
Wow. Okay, without Googling, let's see. It's not Scream.
Nope.
Not Fast, not Halloween, not Friday, not Freddy, not Saw. I'm going through horror real quick. Let's see.
There's only one horror franchise. One franchise that would definitely be considered horror.
Candyman?
No. It's not too obscure either. None of these are very obscure. You'll be like, oh, okay, when I say these, because you'll know. Now maybe you haven't seen them all, but you certainly know the franchise.
Final Destination?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Good call. Final Destination 5,
okay.
Which, by the way, is my second favorite out of that group.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's a highly underrated movie because, spoiler alert, the end of Final Destination 5
is the beginning.
Is the beginning of the original Final Destination, and they don't tell you that. And it's a great fucking twist. Okay, so you got one, which is really impressive because I didn't come up with any. I had to Google this.
You said there's how many do you got?
There's 5 more. So there's a total of 6. One of these I don't think you'll get. I'll just go ahead and give you this one, the Twilight movies. There were 5 of those. You wouldn't get it.
I've never seen any of those.
The 2 that I think you will get though are still on there.
Okay.
Or you may should get. I'll give you a hint. They are
Die Hard?
Yes.
Die Hard. Okay. Yeah.
Call. There's another action series that started in the 80s that you should get.
Terminator?
Nope, that had 6.
Here's the problem. They don't necessarily name them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've all got names to them.
They do, yeah.
5. Wow.
You're doing
Rambo.
Yes.
Rambo. There you go.
You've got 3 of them. That's impressive.
And the last Rambo movie was one of my favorites. Talk about an ultra violent, gory, oh my god, amazing.
I heard that, yeah. I didn't see it, but
you didn't see it? Oh, it's really good. Okay, so I got 3 of them. I got Rambo. Okay.
You got Rambo, Final Destination, and Die Hard. The other ones that you have not gotten, I would say, are newer in that they weren't in the 80s. I don't even think they were in the 90s. I wouldn't. Well, maybe late 90s, but definitely 2000s. Well, that's newer.
How about that? What's that movie with the Katniss? What's her name? The Hunger Games.
Hunger Games only had 4.
Okay. Harry Potter's got 6 because they broke it into 2 or 7. Even more than that.
7. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. If they're newer, I'm not going to be.
So one of them is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, okay. I've only seen the first 3 of those, but I enjoy them. Yeah.
Another one is, well, I guess there's only 2 that you didn't get because I gave you Twilight, Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Jason Bourne series. So the Bourne Identity.
Okay.
And then
Ultimatum
and something, and then the 4th movie with Jeremy Renner that didn't even have Matt Damon, which is technically part of that series. And then Jason Bourne was the 5th movie that came out that Matt Damon came back for.
Okay.
So yeah, those are the 6 franchises that I could find of,
that have 5
worthiness that have 5 movies, because 5 is a really weird number to stop at. You know, most of them go to 6, 7, or Jesus, still haven't stopped yet. Fast X, Jason X, you know, like there's a lot of those. So I thought that was a fun trivia question, though.
No, it is. That's good. Have we ever done? Yeah, we're talking about a lot of like potential new podcasts. Have we ever done overall like best or favorite franchises overall? I don't think we've ever done that either.
No,
that'd be a good conversation to have too. I've been updating our as we speak here.
Nice.
So we cannot forget. We have to pour one out today for the one and only the Iron Sheik.
Oh,
Sheiky baby. Sheiky baby passed away today.
Hogan jabroni.
I mean, it's not funny. I don't even know. Like, it was a surprise to me. Was he ill? I mean, he was old, but was he ill? I don't know.
He was very old, I think. But I have no idea. I'm not really sure. Hold on, I'll look him up real quick. How old was he?
He was 80. So yeah, he's the same age as Joe Biden and Harrison Ford.
81, it says. 81.
Oh, was it?
So, I mean, 81 for a wrestler is incredible. That is intense longevity. Born in 1942 in Iran. The Iron Sheik, rest in peace. He was a very interesting character that usually tweeted in all caps and talked that way too. Yeah. And definitely didn't break character very often. But he passed away, I believe, today, June 7th, 2023.
Yeah, such a bummer. And we just lost superstar Billy Graham within the last since our last podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, you know, it's like every time one of these wrestling legends dies, it's just gonna come fast and furious for the next several years, unfortunately, as we get older and our heroes get older as well. But
yeah, it's not going to stop with wrestling. It's going to be actors. No. It's going to be rock stars. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, the rock stars seem to outlast everybody, though. I'm not sure how that it's like formaldehyde, right? They've just got so much booze and drugs in them.
But I feel like so do the wrestlers, and so do the.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I don't know what it is about them. Maybe they just had more fun. I mean, they abuse their bodies less, I think, than maybe the wrestlers, just because when you're not hopped up on drugs, then you're throwing each other around a ring and hitting each other with steel chairs. So they don't really ever get a break.
So, all right. Well, hey, on that rather somber note, we've been chatting for a while. Dude, it's been good. It's been good to catch up. It's been too long. We need to make sure that we get back into kind of some sort of rhythm. I know that might be difficult with the summer, but let's make some efforts here.
Yes. Well, we have all kinds of new ideas to come back with. And one of the things when we do get back to wrestling one of the things that I'm the most anxious to get back to is a top 5 fantasy bookings for wrestling matches. Like taking somebody from the Legends era, putting them up against somebody today. Like, who would we like to see go after each other? I think when we do get back to the squared circle, that's one of the places I'd like to go for sure.
I like that a lot. All right. That being said, that's Mr. Pip. I'm Chewie. This has been the 411 from 406. We'll talk to you soon. Aloha.
Adios.